everybody. Thank you very much for being here for this first panel of the day about European harmonization of the regulations, so what we should expect. And to talk about this topic, I am with me on stage, Francesca Fiamma, you policy officer at ESMA, Oliver Gadja, your executive director at EUROCROWD, which is a non-profit organization promoting crowdfunding, of course. And then we have Diego Valiante, your senior officer, team leader at European Commission. And I'm Charlie Perreau, I'm the head of startup department at Les Echos, the newspaper. So I'm going to start by a quick question, so I'm going to ask you to answer with a very short answer. It's a multiple question, multiple choice question. So about this regulation, of course, are you happy, optimistic? Are you concerned, or are you relieved? Or D, you can tell me, Joker, anything else? Francesca.
So first of all, thanks a lot for having me here. I'm very happy. So what about the regulation? I'm surely happy, and I think I can speak personally, but also on the basis of the work that ESMA does, because for us, creating a pan-European market for crowdfunding is important. So it's important to achieve these objectives, which is also in the Capital Markets Union, to have something that can be applied, so same rules in all member states, same level of protection for investors, same rules for project owners. So for us, it's a positive improvement in a framework where you had some countries with regulation, some countries with no regulation. So it's a positive innovation and improvement of the EU regulation in capital markets.
Oliver?
Personally, I'm very happy. This is what we've worked for 10 years. For the market, I think it's a huge opportunity that needs to be taken, of course. It has some challenges, but with slight reservation of seeing how it works out, I think it's absolutely positive and nothing else to add there.
I would say our emotions are on hold. We're waiting basically how this framework is going to play out. We have started to feel some good emotions on what we see out there. There's a lot of activity going on, understanding how complex the regime is, but at the same time, what are the benefits attached to it, and in particular, the possibility to provide services cross-border without having to seek license to national member states. So you have a regime that empowers this platform to truly be pan-European. So yeah, emotions are on hold. I would say we start to be feeling happy at what we see out there.
Okay, thank you. Francesca, question for you, because maybe some people here in the room still have questions, of course. And can you tell us maybe a few points that you think that's very important to clarify here before the date, the famous 23rd of November?
Yes. So we think that with regard to the interpretation and application issues, of course, this is a new regulation. It's a EU new regulation, which means that all parties which are involved, so market participants, competent authorities, European Commission, ESMA, EBA. So we all want this to become a EU market, and this means that we need to have convergent, so we need to have common understanding of the main points of the main issues concerning the regulation. When the regulation entered into application, we received a number of requests, and also we started from market participants for clarification. And we also, as ESMA, we started an intense period of discussion with the Commission, with EBA, and with national competent authorities, which were called to authorize crowdfunding service providers. So, because there were, of course, as it always happens when there's a new piece of legislation in place, interpretation issues and application issues can come. So, and since this is a EU regulation, there was a need to have a common agreement at EU level. So for us, as you know, convergence is a is one of our main objectives. The protection of investors across all the EU is one of our main objectives and concern. And since this is a regulation that has a direct impact on investors, for us it was of main importance. So we had a long period of discussions with all competent authorities, Commission and market participants, and we have agreed on a number of issues. I would say we already published like 40 Q&As on the ESMA website, which are available to the public, so everyone can consult them. Some of these Q&As have been developed by the ESMA because they concern the application of the regulation. Others, more maybe complex, which relate to the interpretation of the regulation, they've been developed by the European Commission, but you can find all the Q&As published in the same place, in the same document. We do not see big issues remaining to be clarified, at least for the purpose of the authorization. We still have some discussions ongoing on some key issues, but these are maybe more related to the supervision of already authorized crowdfunding service providers, because we think that the toolbox for the authorization now is ready with the technical standards and the Q&As, and with the fact that NCAs, more or less, they all agree on the basic issues. We are all on the same page. So this for us was very important. We don't see big things remaining in place. But of course, we will continue the discussion. It's an ongoing work stream, never ending, I would say.
And Diego, do you see big things or no?
Big things, well, I mean, we try to look at this in terms of objectives. What do we want to achieve? Our objective was to create a truly pan-European market where we see an industry that is consolidating, meaning doesn't mean that you have more platforms than before, you have less platforms than before, but you have larger platforms. You have platforms that are able to offer one-stop shop services where you can get credit, you can get equity issuance, you can do bond issuance on the same platforms. If we see this, happening, then we see a measure of success, and then we can say we have done a big thing. We see early signs of this happening, and we will see this even more in the coming months, especially after November, when national platform, legacy platform will not be able to operate anymore, and they will need to be necessarily reauthorized under the SSPR. So if the market goes in that direction, I think that's the big development that we would like to see, and we see early signs of that happening. I hope this will continue, because that will be a good sign for the market and for the regime overall.
And Oliver, can you tell us more about a very, very specific point, but maybe it's not very well known, maybe, because I think you mentioned me earlier that it was launched just before Christmas, so maybe a lot of people didn't see it. It's about insurance. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, of course. Look, I mean, so Diogo and Francesca work on the regulatory side. I need to see that the law is being implemented, refined, monitor the market. We have, supported with our members as much as possible, providing information, sharing knowledge. Now the market has a new challenge. And so some of the challenges are direct result out of the regulation that are not answered by other market participants. One of them is for specific insurance with regard to crowdfunding services under ECSPR. And so we last year started discussions with an insurance broker. They were quite interested in developing a tool for the crowdfunding market under ECSPR. They're called Protean Risk, based in London. Anglo-Saxons are always a bit more advanced in this way. And they discussed with a number of insurance companies across Europe, and now are offering ECSPR relevant insurances in every EU member state. So for market participants that are moving into ECSPR, one of the requirements that is carried forward with this regulation, which may require insurance, can be resolved without many problems. So this is where we think the market needs to take this opportunity and needs to start finding solutions for problems that individual members in the market face. And so this is what we've done, and we don't take any part in this. It's their service, but we were very happy that the market can at least move on and operate under the certainty that they have fulfilled all the requirements.
Thank you. Of course, maybe especially in France, maybe you're going to tell me that we're always pessimistic, you know, but we've heard, oh, nobody's going to be ready, it's going to be a catastrophe, so for November or even from now. So what can you answer to that?
So, yes, it's true in France. They're a bit pessimistic, but you don't know how it is in Italy, so it's I'm joking. Well, it's true that considering where we were last year, 1 year ago, we were preparing, as ESMA, we were preparing the technical advice for the Commission for the extension, for the postponement of the end of the transitional period. Because originally the transitional period should have ended in November 2022. And at that point we were a bit concerned in a sense, okay, things are not going, maybe applicants were still waiting and seeing what was going on, competent authorities were still setting up their procedures. So 1 year ago, maybe we could have said, okay, it could be a challenge to have everything ready by November 2022. This is why we suggested to extend the end of the transitional period, but that at the same time when we suggested the Commission this extension, we also recommended and encouraged especially existing crowdfunding service providers, so those who are acting under the national regulation, under the national rules, to apply, so to finalize their procedures and to finalize their internal process to present the authorization, because it's true, 1 year has been given, because then the Commission agreed with us and they extended the end of the transitional period to November 2023, but it is also true that we are mid-February, so, and it's not something that could be done in a couple of weeks. We need to avoid that. NCAs receive a huge number of applications, because it would be difficult for them to handle in a short time frame. So it would be better. I think that we can restate the same message. So it would be important especially for existing crowdfunding service providers. They want to remain they want to become EU crowdfunding service providers, to accelerate their procedure and present the request for authorization. The process started slowly at the beginning, as I said, but we see that now the rhythm is improving. We have like 18 crowdfunding service providers authorized at national level, at EU level, sorry. But consider that 1 year ago, when we prepared the technical advice for the Commission, we estimated in the technical advice that there were like 270 existing crowdfunding service providers. So we believe that there are more to come. So it's really important that the things are done in a duly time frame for both crowdfunding service providers, also for project owners and investors who are of course, all called to work together on this thing.
Oliver, Diego, you want to answer to that?
Yes, so I think it's, as Francesca said, there's of course different speeds of implementation in different member states. I believe in Portugal the law hasn't been passed. In Italy, I think Consop will receive applications as of March, so that is quite late. Of course, that has helped that the deferral of the deadline for 10th November has been moved by 1 year. In other markets, I think there are some NCA that have been slow, but in general, the basic information of what this law entices has been public since many years. The law has been published more than 2 years ago. There can be no misunderstanding with any market actor what this means. Details were not clear, but broadly speaking, that was ready. And we know that some of our members, but also some other platforms, have reached out to NCA something like 2 years ago in order to start discussions, to be prepared. So I think here the market needs to understand it's there, it's not going to change, and as far as I know, there is no way in the law to extend it more. Do your job, yeah? Really be active, understand it, and see if you want to operate under this license, or find an alternative. Yeah, that is probably the challenge right now. But of course, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I would say we are 9 months away, and it's not a very, understandable time period for everybody. And I think we made very clear also last year when we extended the transitional period that this should have been seen more as a warning that you need to get prepared rather than an extension that would be renewed, let's say this year when we find out that you are late with your authorization process. No, there won't be any delay anymore. There cannot be any delay anymore. It's not allowed under the European regime. So by November, you will need to seek, we're talking to the platforms, you will need to seek a reauthorization under the SSPR regime. I think there's been plenty of time to adapt. There is still time to do it. So I would say stay calm, but not too calm. And get your authorization, your papers done.
And so now we're going to talk about, of course, the consequences, the opportunities. So maybe how is it an opportunity for, maybe if we can make a difference between a very small players in a niche market and the big one, Oliver?
Thank you for that question. So I think that we need to understand that when this law was proposed and then the discussions leading up to the proposal, this was a regime that was meant for larger platforms that wanted to operate cross-border. The Commission intended it that way, and within the process of refining the policy within Brussels, and Diogo can explain this in detail, this was changed, not due to the Commission, to be a harmonized law for everyone. So yes, for some smaller platforms, I think it's not impossible. I think it challenges them. It has certain financial requirements on professional requirements. And potentially that is for some platforms too much. On the other hand, I think given the time frame, given the opportunity that the market offers, I don't see a reason why this should really be a hurdle. A small platform that has a niche market and wants to make public offerings to the internet, and the internet is global, I mean, where's the argument to say, but we only communicate to the people in our city, not with financial services. To prove the point, I did this on the train from Brussels to Paris. I made an ECSPR licensed crowdfunding investment through a platform licensed in other member state than where the investment was offered. And that works fairly easy. And that is, I think, what the opportunity is, and why should a platform tell me, but you're not allowed to invest here? So I think this is where I think the real opportunity is there, and if you overcome this initial hurdle of applying, have the professional requirements in place, then this opens up huge opportunities for everyone, no matter if you're small or big.
Yeah, I think the point that this regime was designed only for large platforms is true up to a certain point, because after we, realized the intent by the member states to create a common regime, a fully harmonized regime, we actually tried to design proportionate rules. So meaning that, the requirements are the minimum requirements that you need to provide financial services, whether you are a small player or large players. Now, there is a minimum dimension that you must have in terms of infrastructure in order to provide that safety that is necessary when you have to offer a financial service. So that is something that you cannot avoid. And in fact, I believe that this regime would work also for smaller platforms that want to remain small. What is the benefits? Certainly the passport, definitely it's one, but also the fact that you get so-called regulatory license. I mean, in financial services, it's all about trust. If investors don't trust you, they don't invest you, whether you are small or large or medium size. So the point that this regime is also created to instill trust in investors towards those platforms, because they will have the minimum safeguards that are required to provide financial services. These are financial services. I mean, we're talking about Denmark trying to say, basically, these are not financial. They are. So, and they need some level of minimum standards that, you know, also allow this platform to compete with banks, with other financial intermediaries that you know, have much more burdensome requirements. If we start to compare, you know, the prudential requirements of a bank with a, you know, crowdfunding platform, there is no term of comparison. The dimensions are manifold, are larger for banks or other traditional financial intermediaries. So this is also needs to be taken into account, I think.
Francesca, you want to add something?
Yeah, I don't have that much to add, because I was just noting, I agree with Diego and also with Oliver, in the sense that I don't think that the regulation was designed for big platforms, for big actors. But as we are in the area of the financial services, and there, if you see in the areas of banks, you have big banks and smaller banks, and even very small banks. Also, this happens for investment firms, so different dimensions exist also in other fields concerning the provision of financial services. Is it true that this is the first application of this regulation, so it is possible that some actor will not be ready enough, or will not have enough resources, and then maybe we can think that some merger or acquisitions will happen to join their resources and to continue to provide the services. So, but I think it's there is a proportionality in the regulation and the application, so it is possible to design a business which reflects the dimension of that the service provider would like to have. But it's also true that the basis of this regulation is to have a cross-border market. So it's yes, it's local, but it's also to be open to opportunity, investment opportunity, which comes from other member states, or to involve investors living in other member states. So it's.
Do you think it will benefit for, you know, for smaller countries, maybe the fact that it's cross-border?
Well, I think clearly, if you think of the viewpoint of an operator that may be located in a member state that is small and where maybe regulation has been quite restrictive, yes, this enables them to reach more investors, reach more deal flow, expand. If you look at a market like France or Germany, then the markets are quite big, it's saturated, there's no necessary to go cross-border immediately. In 10 years, I think for many it will be, without a doubt. So there is no, it's not a requirement that you have to be cross-border, you can be. And look at it this way, don't look at the platform operators, look at the SMEs. Their goal is to raise money. They want to be financed. You know, nothing should say you can only raise finance from people in Lithuania. No, so they can go everywhere, and there is competition. They can say, well, look at all these platforms. I want to have that one over there in that country because they do the best service for me. And so competition is good. It will increase, you know, professional levels within the market. It will entice platforms to be innovative, to create better services. And in theory, the outcome should be positive for the whole market and all the participants. There will be people left aside, for sure. That is part of it, yeah.
Diego?
No, just I agree with what Oliver said. In particular, when it comes to the point that we want to look again about what are the final objectives, what are the final results. And the final results should be that even a small investor in a small country should be able to access investment opportunities across the EU. As for German or French or Spanish investors, same thing for Spanish, for Dutch or, you know, Lithuanian companies. All they have to have the same opportunities. And so this, you know, this possibility of creating platforms that can work cross-border without frictions is precisely to give access to companies and to investors.
Okay.
It hasn't been said a long time about crowdfunding, but in the 10 years ago, that was like, we're going to democratize finance against the banks, and this was the starting point of the sector. So this is what is happening. You are being innovated, and you're being given the opportunity to actually fulfill what you set out to. That I think we need to bring back. There was a point in around 2014 when we got a British commissioner in Brussels who was a little bit negative on crowdfunding, where member states also started regulating nationally, and a lot of platforms that wanted to be European first, of course, focused on their markets, because that's where the regulation is, that's where you build your business. And 8 years later, it's understandable that you now have a market, you have a business model. So, but that has to change now.
Yeah, if I can add on this, when we first time looked at crowdfunding was 2014, I think, at the Commission. 13 actually, yeah. So I mean, the crowdfunding industry was a source of innovation. It came in like a disruptive element in financial services, where digitalization was still not there. I mean, we know traditionally how the financial services sector has been slow in adapting to new technologies, and we would like to see this still happening, still ongoing, that the crowdfunding industry pushes new way of intermediating financial services, but also introducing new instruments, new ways of funding, raising money, and the regulatory tool is there. Now it's up to you to take it up and push again the boundaries a little bit further in innovation and financial innovation. So now I can see that the last few years has been now kind of adaptation, not just to the regime but to the market circumstances. We had COVID, we had a major recession, and then we had a fast recovery, but uneven to some extent. And so, yes, there are external factors that are weighing on the industry, but again, we think that this tool can still give you the possibility to introduce new innovation, to bring innovation in the financial services sector.
And Francesca mentioned, potential mergers. Do you think it's gonna be like not an option for the small ones, or do you think that some of them will just disappear in a few months because of the regulation?
Well, I think that we will have to see what happens with the authorization request. I have in mind the number that we gave in the technical advice. It was more than around 270 crowdfunding service providers existing at that time. So let's see how the market reacts. It is possible that some mergers will happen, but honestly, I don't have figures so far. So because we're gathering information on the authorization. It's true that we will have at some point gather some information and data on the evolution of the market, not only on the evolution of the crowdfunding services provided, so in terms of numbers of projects or I don't know, project owners which succeeded in their funding request, but also in terms of numbers of the CSPs. So we will see how the market will evolve, because we will have to gather some information and data, in which we will also call market participants to provide us with their information, and we will see the evolution. On this, I'm not so sure, but it's just something when you have new rules in place coming, it is possible that the adaptation of the market participants can require some adaptations in terms of merger or joint ventures or stuff like that. So, yeah.
Oliver, you want to add something?
No, I think we've seen mergers in the market already. And it's anecdotal evidence, we see it here and there, and not only since 1 year. So I think that is clear. We've seen foreign investment coming into European platforms in order to exploit this opportunity. We've seen foreign players move into the market and spending money in order to get licensed. So this is happening. I think for small player, you have less of a value to sell maybe, unless you're in a market that nobody else is in potentially. So yes, it might be a bit more difficult, but I don't think it's an exclusion criteria, and I don't think we should say, no, you're all going to die. I think everyone has a huge opportunity. It's up to them if they want to take it. Yeah. Maybe it's a bit of a mental thing to how do you approach a challenge. Yeah? I mean, this is disruption if you want, so innovation. How do you deal with this? Do you look back and say, oh, it was all better, or do you see it as a great opportunity? One platform I know of that came new to Europe maybe has more financial firepower, applied in 3 member states. And so I said, okay, we look which one is the best member state for us, which is the best NCA. We just submit 3 applications. Yeah. And they looked at what was out in the market and what other platforms do and said, actually, we really like that model. We will see if we can't copy that. So a very clean set of mind, very focused on achieving something. If it works out is a different question. But it's very different from, but I can't continue doing what I've used to do. And I think that is what needs to happen around. And then it doesn't matter if you're small or big.
There should be also some acknowledgement whether the situation is bad because of the business model and their inability to innovate yourself and reaching a point that you cannot move forward, or is rather the 20 or 30, 50,000 euros that you need to spend to get authorized under the new regime. So again, either way, it's not really the issue, the regulatory regime. It's probably the underlying business model that is not viable anymore, and be it.
So, and when we will see the first results, the first consequences of this new regulation? You think it's going to be like really a few months, a few years, or? Big question.
So. I think we will have a first point of reflection at the end of the transitional period, because there we will see how many existing platforms will have shifted to the new regime, to the EU regime. So there, and also we will make a point on the number of authorizations arrived and on the number of CSP effectively operating campaigns. So I think that by the end of, I would say by the end of the year we could have a first impression, which is not a final one. It's just we could analyze some first trends of the implementation.
This is it's a process. Yeah, I don't think we should measure it by November. We will see something by November. Realistically, there will be this review of the implementation, and you will talk about this later, I guess. But for the regulation to play out, wait 5 years. In 5 years, the Commission may say, well, look at this market again. Maybe it's 7 years. And then we have the real result. So our children will look at it and say, hey, that was really cool what you did back then. Crowdfunding makes a difference. But it's a long term, really to see this.
Yeah, there is a review process embedded in the ECSPR, in this regime, and it's roughly 5-6 years after the enter into application, which has been in 2021. So we probably would expect that the new law would enter, or a review of the current law would be entering into force in 2026, 2027, but meaning that the process is already there. We monitor constantly the market. ESMA has a much more in-depth view of what is happening, and keeps us updated on that. We have a study we'll be launching probably end of this year, beginning of the next, which will assess the impact of the framework on the European market, in terms of costs, in terms of impact of market developments, etc. So the process is there. I mean, frankly, we cannot place a deadline, a specific deadline, but yeah, it's an ongoing process.
What's next for ESMA? Are you preparing some things, just to keep up and maybe to ask, to integrate the players in Europe?
Yeah, so we are in a way involved and engaged in different kind of activities. First of all, there is the monitoring of the authorizations and the monitoring, and we gather, so we receive the notification from national competent authorities, and then we, of all authorized CSPs, and then we publish the new authorization in the register. And we keep this register update. So the taking care of the register is one of our activity, and at the meantime we analyze what is going on, because the information from the register can be very important in understanding where the market is going, especially in terms of member states where CSPs are establishing or developing their business. Then we have the ongoing activity that we do to clarify interpretation and application issues. So it's the so-called level 3 regulatory activity to achieve convergence and harmonization among competent authorities, and to make sure that all market participants are treated the same way, in an harmonized way. And then we will have the analysis of we will prepare, I think, end of the year, starting new one, the report for the Commission with the EBA. And we will have to assess, there is the review, the report that we have to prepare. There is a long list of things to do and to assess. We'll have to analyze, and we'll have to assess the application of the regulation, both in terms of on the platforms, so on the crowdfunding service providers, their organizational requirements, how did they work, or like prudential requirements, or the application of the AML, the anti-money laundering requirements to CSPs, the authorization of third country entities to operate into the EU markets, or the level of satisfaction of investors. Also, we will gather information and data from market participants. For instance, one was mentioned by Diego on the cost of compliance. This is very important because we do not have this information by ourselves. We need information to be provided and data to be provided, because we need to assess how the crowdfunding market is going, and what is the level of cost that crowdfunding service providers will have to support to comply with the regulation. So at a certain point, you will need to be ready, first of all, to have your say on our proposal, our suggestion, but mostly you should be ready to contribute to this, which is a very important moment, where you share information and data on the business, so we can have an overview of the markets and have also an idea of where the market could go and where the regulation could go. This is a very important element and aspect where market participation and contribution is, of course, needed and accepted.
And Oliver, you told me yesterday, I don't want to say anything wrong, so you're finalizing a legal review of the status?
Yeah, so we have a long history of providing legal reviews on crowdfunding. I think we did it 3 times, all 27 and 8 member states in those days, how crowdfunding was applied at the time, what national rules worked, and so on. And so what we are doing right now is a review which is being finalized. I can't tell you exactly how long it takes, because it's actually legal expertise that is going in there, so not ours directly, of how ECSPR is being basically applied by NCA in the member states, what the licensing requirements are, where we find it out, where we know it, and what potential tax issues are. This is not going to answer, all the questions that people have. It will be a nice discussion point, but we want to do this for all 27 member states, so that we already see, where don't we have convergence, where is still discrepancies, and why maybe complain certain platforms more than others maybe has to do with the markets they are operating in. So this, I think, is a vital piece where we can contribute to the discussion, to the sharing of knowledge, and building on facts on future actions. So this is, I think, a continuation of our work, and I've seen the draft, I've read through the draft. There's still a few member states missing, but it's quite advanced, so I think it will be about 80, 100 pages, where we have a 1 to 2 page review of each market at least, with specific legal aspects on what is different in those countries. Yeah.
And for you, Diego, what are your next steps?
Our next steps? Well, as I said, we are going to I have also discussions with ESMA end of the year on their joint report with EBA. We are going to launch our own study on assessing the impact. We are working still on one last RTS from EBA on the risk management framework, so that will be cleared in the coming weeks. But you know, that's quite already a lot on the table for us in the next 10 months or so. But ultimately, we want to see what happens out there.
Okay, we're going to finish this panel by just also a simple question. And what is a bit maybe your wish right now for the sector? That was the surprise question.
I think you should go first.
What is my wish for?
Yeah, for the sector, for the market.
Well, my wish for the market is, of course, that it grows, it establishes itself, and it's full of variations in the market offering across Europe, so that it can finance from, you know, creative industries to renewable energy to infrastructure to real estate to business, and that it becomes an asset that individual citizens can you know, use. How we get there is by sharing knowledge and discussions. I mean, like we do here today, and you know, I think it's great that Florence organized this. We've done 18 conferences over the last 10 years, and if you participate and if you exchange and if you talk to people and find out, then you're just more knowledgeable and you're not afraid and you can take advantage. And so I would invite everyone to continue doing this and then find a good framework in ensuring that Francesca and ESMA and Diogo and the Commission can actually find solutions that help the market.
Diego?
I would say this would be a nice conclusion of the panel. I want just to add that I think my expectation, wish, would say is that the industry remains a source of disruption for the financial services sector, a source of innovation, a source of change and of service for clients, for investors and firms out there, because ultimately that was the value added of this new industry when it originally came in. Democratizing finance means ultimately provide access, and access that is affordable also for those that do not have large capitals. So yeah, should just continue to serve its purpose, and I wish it will continue to serve its purpose.
Yes, just a final word. Of course, I fully agree with the wish of a transition in the new regime in a smooth way, market adaptation and achievements of the objectives. From an ESMA perspective, of course, my wish and my expectation is that the confidence of investors is maintained stable, that investors are protected, and so therefore that the requirements established to protect investors are fully respected, and CSPs and offers comply with this requirement. This is very important because we are involving potentially all EU citizens in investing in often startup, challenging new projects, sustainable, innovative projects. So we know what are the risks of investing in startup and innovative projects. So, but we are pointing also to retail investors. So from an ESMA perspective, my wish and expectation is that investors continue to remain protected, and we will do our best to, of course, to ensure that this is made.
Well, okay. Thank you very much for being here and talking about this topic. And thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask them later. Thank you.
Thanks.